because smart is becoming an ingredient. When a designer is building something, they now have metal and fabric and rubber and whatever, and smart is an ingredient they can just build in there. And the tools to make it easier to design smart in are getting better and better and better. So that you won't have to be a hardcore nerd developer anymore to work with smart as an ingredient. You can be a designer and it'll be much more accessible for people to include. That's going to enable us to make any object in our lives smart. And not only the objects in our lives, but the infrastructure in our lives. I do a lot of work with retail. And we're talking with retailers about making all of the stores smart so that they can be more responsive. Remember I said people want customization and personalization. To be able to have a store that is personalized to your needs when you walk in the door is what we're talking about. We are verging on an era of smart everything. Our neighbors down in California are facing potentially a 30-year drought right now. Not watering your lawns is probably not going to cut that in the long term. Agriculture is where 80% of the water goes, and they're going to have to figure out ways to use that precious resource of water more efficiently. Technology can help with that. Today, when you're watering your fields as a farmer, you are indiscriminately spraying water in the air. And a lot of it, if it's a hot day, is just going back up into the clouds. And some of your plants are getting more water than they need, and some are getting less. Similar with fertilizers. Spray fertilizer on there, make sure every plant gets what they need, and whatever is left will just leach away. Well, that's great, into the water supply. Thanks very much. So wouldn't it be nice if you could understand what the field needed, what each plant needed? Have a sensor, an intelligent sensor in the soil that could report back to the watering system, maybe it's a robot, who knows, that tells the farmer, I need this much water now, this much fertilizer, and no more. What a much smarter way to manage the resources that we have, the precious resources that we have. So we're in an era of smart everything. You're going to have heard this referred to as the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, ubiquitous computing. Doesn't matter what it's called. It's the idea that we can make any object and every piece of infrastructure smart and sensing and connected. We're talking about building a nervous system for the world is one way it's been put. If you do that, what can you do with it? Why would you do that? What are the advantages? Well, it's all about optimization. You can optimize. Great, let's optimize. And you optimize because you're able to sense what's happening in a system. So in the example of that plant, you can figure out how dry is the soil, how much nitrogen does it have in it, what do I need to do? You then, after you've sensed that, you can interpret what to do. So you send that information back to some kind of central computer, and you make a decision. So you interpret that. And once you've done that, once you've made a decision on what to do, in this case, might need a little bit more water, might need to put some fertilizer on there, then I take action. And then you do it again, all over again. So you have these control loops over and over again, and you optimize that. In this case, you might optimize to use as little water and as little fertilizer as possible. Great. Sounds good, right? The world's a better place. But the real question and I don't know, maybe you're all thinking about Internet of Things already, you're all hot for it, it's great, let's go, let's make Oregon, internet smart. The real question we should be asking is, what should we optimize for? Traditionally in IT, for the last 30 years or so, we've really optimized around two things, driven by the financial overlords that provide the IT budgets. And those are efficiency and productivity. And we've done a great job with that. We're a lot more productive because of PCs on our desks and internets and mobile devices and all that stuff. It's great. But there are other things you can optimize for too. And I encourage anybody that's thinking about doing an Internet of Things deployment, before they get into geeking out over all the tech details and the sensors and the servers and all that, stop. Stop first, step back, and say, what are we actually trying to optimize for? Because you can optimize for lots of different things. Of course, you can optimize for efficiency, and you should. That's a great thing to go optimize for. It's what your customers are going to want. Remember I said millennials in particular love efficiency. And there's all sorts of types of efficiency. So you can optimize for efficiency of time, perhaps for passengers traversing the ODOT transportation network. You could optimize for cost reduction. You can optimize for resource usage, energy usage, fuel usage, to try and make Oregon a more sustainable place. There are many things you could optimize for, but if you don't know what you're optimizing for ahead of time, you're not going to deploy and make good decisions as you do that. And you're going to go back later and think, oh, if only. There are other things beyond efficiency that you can optimize for. You could optimize for the quality of the experience for your customers. And there's many things you could optimize for there. You can optimize for public safety. You can optimize to make the transportation network feel more responsive to my personal needs. Because remember, people want personalized, customized products and experiences. You could optimize for convenience, for comfort, for increased security. So think about what is important. Put your stake in the ground and optimize for that. You can go beyond that too. And I just came back from talking to a big theme park company. They're going to think about maybe optimizing their experience for happiness. What would it mean for ODOT to optimize for customer happiness? What does that look like? And you might think that's funny, but maybe that's what you absolutely should be focused on. And there's lots of other things you could optimize for too. Traffic flow, reduce pollution. If you're in Shanghai, pollution is number one. So there are many things that you could optimize for, and I just encourage you to always step back first before you go on some big project deployment and say, what are we optimizing for? And think beyond the traditional realms of efficiency and productivity, because there's more goodness to be got there than just those two. So that's computing getting smaller. That's smart everything. Now let's move on to natural interfaces. What does it mean when I can communicate with computers and they can communicate with me in ways that are natural to human beings? We're looking at an era where it's kind of like the Cambrian explosion, where not only in the Cambrian era did we see this massive diversity of life and huge number of new species formed, but also many of those species evolved eyes and the ability to see. We are moving to an era where computers will be able to see and understand the world for the first time. We're also moving to an era where virtual reality, which has been talked about since the 1990s as like it's here like 2 more years, it'll be great. It's finally here. It's finally reality, and it's enabling people to think about not just gaming, but also training, safety training, and a whole new set of travel and communications experiences in a completely different way. So virtual reality is looking very interesting. I think beyond that, there's also the field of augmented and mixed reality that I think is very interesting. Augmented reality, so virtual reality is where I put on a helmet, because it senses how I'm moving my head, I feel like I'm somewhere else. I'm immersed in a different reality. Augmented reality kind of overlays something on top of the world that I can see. Augmented reality typically is information added over the top. So if in a driving context, I might have a virtual dashboard on my windshield. Mixed reality is saying, well, let's take the virtual reality world and mix that with sort of augmented reality. So you can start to blend the digital and physical worlds in new ways. To bring that to life, I just thought I'd show you a short video from Microsoft. So they've talked about this product called HoloLens. They haven't said when it's coming yet. I believe they have said that it's Intel Inside. Woohoo! Dun, 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 dun. And this will be coming in the Windows 10 timeframe. So if you've not seen this before, it's going to look a little bit like science fiction. And yes, this is a demo video. Is it going to be absolutely like this with the first Revo product? I don't know. I've not seen this thing yet. But I want you to start thinking about what might be possible in this time frame. Some of the things I'm going to show you today, by the way, are not directly transportation related. So don't be thinking, well, what does that have to do with... I'm just trying to show you things are going to get weird in a really cool way. And that, embrace what Moore's Law is going to bring. So let me see if I can click this puppy on.
What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one.
Now what?
And tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine. Because when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see. This is Microsoft HoloLens.
You might get that technology this year. Wow. Right? So I wanted to show you that not because I think there's an immediate transportation application. There are probably many. I want to plan my route. I want to see it virtually. There's lots of stuff you could do there. But I wanted to show that to you to make you go, what? Really? This is coming? Yes, it's coming. And lots of stuff is coming with it. So you almost have to, because we've seen some progression of technology, it feels linear, but it's actually exponential. And that means that what comes in the next 5 years will be tremendously breakthrough. So be ready for that. And when you're thinking about what you want to implement in the future, don't think about what you were able to do in the past and then sort of extrapolate linearly from it. What I'm trying to tell you is set your minds free, expect that the technology will be there, challenge companies like Intel and people like us to deliver that for you at a price point that is doable. What I just showed you there was not even possible 5 years ago. Now we're talking about delivering it, and delivering it really well. So, and at a price point where everybody will be able to access this. It won't be some lab project in a university with equipment that cost $100,000. So make assumptions about what you want to do with technology by thinking about this as a sort of a reference point. So we're moving to an era where computers will be able to see, hear, and understand the world. This is the breakthrough that will enable us to do lots of cool stuff in transportation, self-driving cars being the most obvious one. So you are potentially, I was just in New York last week, so I snapped that picture there. There are cameras everywhere, and there are going to be more and more cameras deployed. I'm imagining that you're thinking about what you want to do with cameras. You could start to monitor what's happening on city streets, on freeways. I'm sure you do a lot of that already. But by the way, thank you for those signs over the freeway that tell me how long it's going to take to get home at night. Good job. I love that. More of that would be great. Love it. But to be able to gather information about the real-time status of your city network, you can deploy cameras, and they will be able to understand a lot more of what they see now. They'll be able to understand and count how many cars there are. They'll be able to understand who those cars are. Are they self-driving cars? Are they privately owned cars? Are they shared cars? You'll be able to understand all of that and understand the load on your network in real time. You could also maybe even use it to ticket people for walking across the street where they shouldn't in real time. Automatic jaywalk tickets. I don't know, could be a source of revenue. So you can start thinking about sensing your city in a different way. This is also the technology that are going to enable robots to escape their cages. So for the last, I don't know how long, robots have been trapped in two places, either on the pages of science fiction novels or inside cages in manufacturing facilities. The reason they're in cages, Robots are very big, powerful creatures, right? Powerful pneumatic arms, very heavy. Human beings, squishy, malleable, breakable. Put a robot that can't see, remember, in contact with a human being that's squishy and malleable and breakable, bad things happen. That's why they're trapped inside cages. If you go to a manufacturing facility, there is a cage, the robots are one side, the humans are the other, because they can't be trusted, basically. It's not their fault, they can't see you. Robots will now be able to see you. They'll be able to see, hear, understand objects and their relationships. That's what will enable robots to finally roam safely amongst us. They are already in trials in many places you might not expect. If you go to the Home Depot in San Jose, they have their first robot in trials. You can walk into that Home Depot now with some screw or bolt you need, whatever it might be, widget. You hold it up to the robot and say, I want one of these. It understands English and Spanish, by the way. It will look at that, listen to you, understand you're looking for something, take a picture of that, figure out where that widget is, if it has it in stock, and then it will say, would you like me to take you to aisle 3B? And takes you there. And you follow it, and it takes you and shows you the widget. That's not something I'm making up. That's in trial now. So robots are going to be part of our world. They are finally going to escape the pages of science fiction novels and be part of our lives. So think about what could you do in that circumstance? How could you maybe use them to help people who aren't able to get around as easily? How could you use robots to do that? Because robots, a self-driving car is essentially a robot with 4 seats and 4 wheels on it. So we're looking at an era of autonomous machines. Self-driving cars is one category, robots is another. There will be other autonomous machines that help us with our lives, help us get around, help us achieve the tasks we need to achieve. So we started off with the horse and carriage, successful mode of transportation. Smelly, but romantic, nice. And we took the first step 130 years ago, and we got rid of the horse. Good job. So we now have the horseless carriage, and that's been around in volume since, Benz did that in 1886, I think it was. Now it's time to get rid of the driver, to go with the horseless, driverless carriage. If we can do that, we can radically change the entire transportation system. It's something you hear from a lot of tech companies like me, tech people like me, because we think it is absolutely revolutionary as a building block, and I want to explain why. It's not just because we think we're going to sell a bunch of chips. We will, great. It's not why I come to work every day. It's because I want to change the way that we live our lives for the better. I think this is one of the fundamental technology breakthroughs that will make our quality of life better for everybody. Let me explain why. One of the big problems with public transportation systems for a long time has been the first mile, last mile problem. I probably would take Max to work. I live in the Pearl, as I said, and I go to work in Hillsborough. I would take the Max to work, and I had a fantasy of doing it. You know how many times I did it? Twice. Why? Because I didn't want to do the mile journey from the Max station to Intel and from my house to the Max station downtown. First and last mile. If you could come up with self-driving cars that can help bridge that gap and link me in to a holistic transportation system, game on, I'm all in. Because I don't want to drive on 26, thank you very much. I'd rather be doing email. And the number of people I see who are driving on 26 and doing email is a problem. People are going to continue to do this, and if we're going to continue to make them drive and make them responsible for driving, bad things are going to happen. We already lose 30,000 Americans per year on the roads and maim many others. So if we can fix this first mile, last mile problem, public transportation becomes even more attractive than it is. There are other reasons why people don't take public transportation, but that's the big one. Second one is not wanting to be in the same space as people who smell worse than you. But that's a different issue we have to address in a different way. But we're looking at an era where transportation can truly move from being something you buy to something that is a service for nearly everybody. So that car ownership becomes the rarity, not the norm. If we can make that happen, you can start to hide the cost of ownership and wrap it all into that service. Millennials are interested in car-to-go because they don't want to have to deal with parking, they don't have to deal with insurance, they don't have to deal with maintenance, because that's friction. They just want it all pay by the minute, pay by the hour, pay by the day. If you can wrap everything into a service cost, a service fee, maybe you don't have to worry about the gas tax anymore. Because maybe you can hide the costs of maintaining the infrastructure that you need to run this transportation over inside that fee. If you're having to worry about targeting consumers who own the cars and convince them that they should be paying more, paying for infrastructure, maybe that's a losing battle. Maybe you'll never do that. I mean, maybe don't spend time with the legislator, get out and talk to consumers who vote and help them change their minds. 20 years' time, maybe that you'll get there. Or, if transportation becomes a service, if instead of buying a BMW, I join the BMW club, and whenever I need a car, a BMW shows up and takes me where I need to go. If that's the case, maybe ODOT should be charging BMW for being able to provide that service in Oregon. Maybe that's the cost of doing business, as well as them having to cover insurance and liability and maintenance and gas, which is all now hidden in that transportation fee. Maybe they have to pay to use your roads, because the consumer's not going to see it. That's a negotiation between you and BMW or Hertz or Car2Go or whoever it is, whoever the service provider is. So maybe this is one way, as these products move from products to services, it's an opportunity for you to renegotiate that business model and your role within it. Now, if you're just there saying, you're in Oregon, we're the mafia, you pay. You have to pay to be here. That's not going to go over well. Maybe you can do it because what else are they going to do? But maybe you can do it because you're offering them a service. Maybe there's something you can do in infrastructure terms that you can sell them as a service. Start selling the roads and the infrastructure as a service, not as a product that you have to pay maintenance on. How could you do that? Could you have smart city fleet management services? Could you manage the traffic flow in your cities and in your road networks? Could you charge a service fee for that? So that you don't have gridlock, so that you help to manage and route all of these cars and help them efficiently get where they need to go. How much is that worth? Oh, we'll sell you that service, BMW Road Club, for however much it is. Oh, and we'll give you the roads for free. So think creatively about what you're selling. Maybe you're not selling roads and no potholes anymore. Maybe you're selling something else. If the BMW Car Club is wanting to operate in Oregon, they don't want potholes either, because it's going to cost them maintenance fees. So start selling lack of maintenance to those big organizations when they start to form, and they're already starting to form. Think about what GE did with their jet engines. GE used to sell jet engines to the airlines. Airlines didn't want to own jet engines. They're in the getting people from A to B business. They're not wanting to own very expensive pieces of equipment and having to maintain them. So GE realized this. They weren't making money. The airlines sure as hell weren't making money. So they changed their business model. And they started selling jet engines to United and Delta and all these companies as a service. So they retained the ownership of them, and they sold it to United on the basis that United cared about, which was airtime. So you don't pay for a GE engine until you're on the runway and headed up into the air. Then you start paying by the minute. That ended up helping the airlines become more profitable. It helped GE become more profitable. How? Because it used to be that United had to have their engine maintenance crew, and Delta had their engine maintenance crew, and Alaska had their engine maintenance crew. Now there's just one crew, and they service all of the GE engines, and GE takes care of that. So the economies of scale make a huge difference. So I'd encourage you, as you're facing these funding challenges, to think about, as products become services, As the world moves to services, how could you get into the services business, and how could you change the business and the funding model beyond all recognition so you're not having to keep going back to the well and asking for money to fix the potholes or to keep the train going from Portland to Eugene? That's what I wanted to offer you today, is this: there is hope, but it's going to require creative thinking to think about these things as services and not products. If you could do this, maybe you can start to offer optimal trip routing services. Maybe you partner with Google to do it. Maybe you club up with California Dot, other dots, and start to build a service between you. But you're going to have to think creatively on how can you use this technology so that you can coordinate the traffic through your networks like some grand ballet. That's why I have the ballet dancers up there. How could you make it feel like everything is optimized, and when you call on ODOT for your transportation network service to get from A to B and back again, it happens the most coordinated, seamless, frictionless way possible. What we're talking about is thinking about people as a package, potentially. Look at how efficient FedEx has become, how efficient UPS has become from moving packages from A to B through different hubs, linking different networks together, local delivery vans, planes, trains, automobiles, whatever it needs to be. How could you start to think about people as a package to be able to deliver people from A to B? The number of parents I speak to who spend a good portion of their lives, how many of you have kids and take them to soccer practice or something similar? Yeah, you spend a lot of your time doing that. And it's great quality time with the kids, some of the time. What if you could order a pod and it would securely come to your door? You can put the kids in the pod. They can't, they're in there then. You can monitor them. There's a camera inside. You can see how they're doing, how they're behaving if you want to check in on them. It takes them to soccer practice. The teacher is there. They get to enter a code, or their face is recognized, and then the kids are released into their custody. Different way of thinking about things. Thinking about people as a package. What we're talking about is an era of no more ownership, no more driver's licenses, because who needs to drive anymore? No more parking. Think about how much space in any urban environment is dedicated to parking you wouldn't need anymore. Because cars will just be driving around waiting for a fare. You have as many cars as you need at any given period in time. And because you're ODOT and you have a big fat computer that's monitoring this and doing demand prediction, you have the right number of cars going out to pick people up at the right time as demand ebbs and flows. No more parking, no more insurance, no more traffic signals. It's a very different world than the world that you live in now, that we all live in together. But if you could make a breakthrough, you could completely change the way people get around, change people's mobility. There are a lot of people who cannot drive because they're too young, they're too old, they're just unable to drive. Think about the access you would give them with this kind of network. And maybe you do it in partnership with companies like Hertz. Because the reason there's no insurance is people insure themselves today because they don't want to take the personal risk of driving into somebody else and then being liable. If you're a giant organization, you can take on that risk yourself because you spread it over the breadth of your organization. So Hertz, BMW, the state of Oregon could become self-insured. So there's a big discussion to be had about who's going to provide these self-driving car services. You're going to outsource it to private businesses, you're going to have some of your own, you're going to have a blended model. But remember I said that there were three pieces of the future. I've talked a lot about business models, I've talked a lot about the technology side of things and what's possible, but it also matters what people feel. Any of you had the pleasure of being in a self-driving car? Freaky as heck, right? Yeah. Because the human brain, we attribute anything that moves to being alive. And if something's alive, it's a potential threat. So the car manufacturers have a long way to go to figure out how to make people feel comfortable in these death traps on wheels, just the way people are going to perceive them when they first experience them. But these are going to be a lot safer than a crazy human person behind the wheel. Humans cause most of the car accidents that are out there, and 30,000 people a year die as a result, causing $2 billion worth of damage to cars. The body shop industries are not going to like self-driving cars. Neither are taxi drivers and truck drivers. That's another issue. So when I talk about self-driving cars, I always get asked about drones, so I'll just nip that question in the bud. Are we going to see drones flying through our skies? Maybe. We'll see how Amazon does lobbying the FAA to get the ability to fly. I think you'll more likely see them happen outside America first, in countries that care less about their airspace. But I think drones' most interesting area is not flying the entire distance. I talked about the last mile problem with self-driving cars, then connecting to a broader network. I think drones are really interesting from a delivery perspective for the last 10 feet, the last 20 feet. So the self-driving delivery truck brings the parcel to your door, and then the drone pops out and puts it on your porch. So that's where I think drones play. All right, so now we've done smarts, we've done natural interfaces and computers being able to see. Now let's finish up with connected and learning. So they're going to be computers, big, huge computers, that run new algorithms that allow them to learn over time. So not only will these devices be smart, but they're connected to a computer that makes them seem even smarter and helps them learn over time. So when one robot learns a task and how to do something, all of his buddies will learn instantly too, because they'll communicate that idea across to each other. I think there was a discussion earlier about data. We've got to gather data because with data you can do amazing things. And it's very true. Data has become the new oil. If you can gather information, gather data, you can refine that data and turn it into insight and wisdom. So the people that are making money in the data business are the same people that are making money in the oil business. So to make money in the oil business, you suck oil out of the ground, and then you refine it to turn it into gasoline and jet fuel and bitumen and all those things. And that's how you make your money. If you're in the data business, you're sucking the data out of the world using sensors, whether they are hard sensors like cameras and accelerometers, or soft sensors. And soft sensor would be a Facebook page or a Twitter feed. So you're gathering that data and you're refining it. And with data, you refine it from data to information, from information to insights, and insights to wisdom. And once you have wisdom, not only can you, I'll give you an example. It's a transportation example. So data would be GPS coordinates. They're just numbers, not much use to anybody. You combine that with a physical map, suddenly I have an address. That's my information. I can see where somebody is. If I get enough of that over time, I can start to get insight. So if I see that a person with their cell phone is moving from this address in the morning to this address most of the day, and then they go back to that same address at night, I can infer that's probably home, that's probably work. If I get enough of that data over time, my wisdom is I can start to project where is this person going to go next. This is what gives you the insight to provide services that are personalized. And this is what Google is doing. It's what Facebook is doing. If you look at the Google Now service, it's exactly that. It's taking vast amounts of data and refining it down into wisdom and insights that lets them provide services to you. So data is a very important resource that you should be thinking about grabbing. That's why smart sensors are so important, to feed this beast, to get this information. And we've seen an era where many things have moved from the physical world to the digital world, atoms to bits. And there's a lot of examples up here. I mean, the obvious ones of books and movies, but we're starting to see stock markets become digital. Wallets are becoming digital. Trust has become digital. Reputation has become digital. If you're an Airbnb person, you're more likely to rent your place to somebody that's rented successfully with other places because they've built digital reputation. So the many things have become digital. When they become digital, they become subject to the benefits of Moore's law, that you can start to make things scale for almost nothing. If I want to print books, I have to print them on paper, and that costs me money. If I want to sell them on Amazon digitally, it doesn't cost me anything. My marginal cost is zero. So what's next? What are the next things that will become digital? I got lots of examples on here. Taxis are going to become digital. Delivery will become digital. I think it is going to be the expectation with consumers will move from next day to delivery to next hour delivery in the next couple of years. So you're going to see a lot more things become digital. And I wanted to give you an example to help you think, well, Because the same way the headlights help me think about smart objects, what am I talking about when I talk about making everything digital? The example I want to give you is sports. What if you could take a sporting event and digitize it? Doesn't really make sense when I say it that way. What I'm talking about, and the example I'll give you, is a company called Replay Technologies. And they have a technology called 3D. What they do is they use high-definition 4K cameras, they have multiple of them, 30, 35 of them, around the perimeter of a stadium, taking video of the event. That's a lot of data, 4K high-definition video stream. They then feed all of these video streams, 30 or 35 of them, into a big fat computer, lots of Intel chips inside it, which makes us happy. And they use that information to do, well, I'll show you. Okay, you get the idea. So sports commentators are having a ball with this. So some of the networks have bought into this technology. You may have already seen something like this when you're watching sports. It's in the hands of sports commentators today. The next step is every tablet, every phone will give you the ability when you're watching sports to be able to, gotta be careful here, to be able to put the camera anywhere you want on the pitch. So if you want to watch the field goal from one perspective on the pitch, you can choose wherever that is. You can be there on the pitch. And if you've got a virtual reality headset on, you're going to feel like you're on the pitch. What could you do with this kind of technology if you digitized your city, digitized your network, so that you can have multiple cameras, but you could build virtual camera you can move around freely on your network anywhere you like. So when you digitize things, you can do amazing things with them. I'm not sure there's a direct implication there for your networks, but I wanted to give you, again, a provocative way of thinking, well, what does this make possible? What is going to become possible next? Maybe you can start thinking about providing serendipity as a service. If you understand where the customers are who want to travel, they're about to need to travel, if you can anticipate that by gathering data and understanding that, and be able to understand what kind of a service they're going to need, and be able to work and coordinate with service providers, whether it's something you deliver yourselves or it's a service provider like Hertz or BMW, whoever it's going to be, to ensure that the right transportation shows up and that journey is optimized for them. You can provide serendipity as a service so that for the consumer, they feel like, oh, how lucky. I just needed to go, I've just done with my drink, I'm just headed out, and there's a car right there for me. Great, I was lucky. No, it wasn't. That luck was manufactured. And that is what a number of industries are looking at, is how do I manufacture luck? How do I create serendipity as a service? So I want to wrap this up with a little video that just sort of brings this together. If you could start to think about everybody's personal data, putting it all together, creating new experiences, thinking about new ways to manage transportation networks, what would that look like?
Over the last 100 years, the automobile has transformed our world. Cars have freed us, but they've also led to challenges in safety, congestion, pollution, and isolation. We have the opportunity to change our future. Through advanced sensing, interconnected data, and intelligence embedded in our cars and the environment, we can create a transportation system that knows who we are and where we need to go. One that's connected and cooperative, easing the burden of driving and making transportation safer and more efficient. 8:15 Tuesday morning. A parent, his child, and a classmate leave the house on their normal drive to school. They each have a unique data profile of their travel preferences, routine destinations, and upcoming trips. As they approach, the car securely links to this data. Inside, the car recognizes its occupants and the trip they're taking. Utilizing their data profiles, the car dynamically adapts to them, changing in-cabin settings, music and media, fuel efficiency, and driving performance. Anticipating their destination, school by 8:30, the car displays the different routes they normally take. It accesses real-time information about delays and helps them choose the safest and most efficient path. In the back seat, the children start a game. This game allows interaction with the outside environment as they pass by. Back at home, the child's mother checks her phone. Traffic is heavy on her normal commute to work, so the transportation system offers her an incentive if she takes a different route and leaves a few minutes later. When she enters her car, her mobile device seamlessly and securely connects with her vehicle, displaying her chosen route and relevant trip details. As she drives, her car senses and communicates with the environment around her. Connecting with an upcoming traffic signal, her car tells her that the light will shortly change to green, as no other vehicles are detected at the intersection. To enhance her driving, she's given an augmented view of the world around her. Dynamic driving zones, in this case a virtual bike lane and a school bus zone, make obstacles normally obscured suddenly visible, helping ease the flow of traffic. Knowledge of road conditions is shared in real time between vehicles, allowing drivers to avoid obstacles and hazards before they're encountered. In this case, an approaching car is alerted to the delay and an alternate route is suggested. This car merges onto the freeway, linking to the vehicles around it. They share their general destination and where they're exiting, forming an impromptu group that begins to drive together autonomously. As the car nears the driver's destination, it connects with local infrastructure to find available parking. Accessing data collected from sensors and other cars, a location is negotiated and reserved, taking into account cost, safety, and driver preferences. Over time, increased intelligence, sensing, and connectivity in our cars and the infrastructure around us will change our experience of travel. We'll work together, individuals, groups, cities, and governments, to travel more safely and efficiently. And our very idea of transportation will shift to one that is more sustainable, cooperative, and ultimately freeing.
Lots of rousing music at the end there. So we are moving through a period of our time in humanity where we're bridging this gap between the physical and the digital world. This is not new news as a futurist. I'm not bringing you something you've not heard before. This is an ongoing process that is going to continue and continue big time over the next 10 years or so. And a lot of the technologies and building blocks that I talked about in the last hour and a half, hopefully you're seeing how that's going to bridge those two worlds. And that's going to affect every sector out there, including transportation. So as you look forward, as you think about your plans for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, every sector, not just transportation, every sector is going to be affected by these three big forces that I walked you through. Computing has been the foundational, transformational force in every sector for the past 40 years of modern computing. It is going to be even more so. So in transportation, as well as all these other sectors, these ideas of smart everything, objects and infrastructure becoming smart at very low costs and having great performance and ability to do cool things, natural interfaces, computers being able to see, hear, and understand the world, and then all of those computers and objects and infrastructure connected to smart learning infrastructure that is the brains behind it all and that coordinates this grand ballet in our lives, is going to be the reality that all of these sectors face, yours included. So that was the message I wanted to bring you today, is there's a lot of cool stuff coming. It is going to give you amazing tools, flexibility, and create new possibilities. I'm not here to predict what's going to happen. I told you that at the beginning. I'll tell you again at the end. But you're going to have at your disposal incredible technology that will enable you to create magical experiences for people and to create new services and maybe solve some of the major challenges you face, including perhaps your funding issue, by thinking very differently about how you do your business. So, with that, I realize I'm between you and lunch. I hope that was informative. Thank you so much for your time.